I will be showing a lot of graveyard photos in this video. While I'm doing this, before we get to the actual video, think about how long that these people had to live compared to how much you've already had. And how, even with all the bad, you've been able to have all these good experiences and good memories, no matter how much bad there was, compared to the people, some of these people that lived much shorter lives than you. Think about that while you're watching this video. The graveyard brings perspective. It helps put everything into a grander context. A lot of the time as individuals, we get so trapped in what we want. The things that are going wrong in our lives, that we forget that we are alive. So much of our troubles as individuals is that we are attached to a societal context, a context that we can't quite view ourselves or connect with our deeper selves outside of. It's always in relation to society, other people in society, rather than in relation to the macro and in relation to what human life is, how short it is, how long it is, how much we've had. And so much of our imagination, of what we imagine, our hopes and our dreams, and what we think of when we're just kind of entertaining ourselves with our imagination, when we're entertaining ourselves with maybe we're in a really good mood and we are imagining, oh, I like this person, I like hanging out with this person, oh, that was a good memory, I want to create more like that. Or when you're thinking of, when you're listening to a song, you start thinking of a context in which that song's playing, or perhaps you're just enjoying the song itself and kind of imagining yourself as the character in that song, or as the one who is singing it. But it's always in relation to other people in society, or family, friends, or in a societal context where you're in a physical societal place in our heads when we imagine things. It's so much of it is in a context of our lives, the people that we know, that a lot of the time it's hard to feel our soul or to feel subtler energy because we're not very subtle. All of these things are very obtuse. Instead of an acute feeling and contemplating that, or an acute idea, or a very subtle aspect to our soul, spirit, or our existence, it's always with these layers of our human body layer, layers of matter that are buildings or cars, or the layer that is more time-oriented, or to the past or to the future. Of all these layers that keeps us very much tied in, for good and for ill, to our certain context. And most of the neurosis, the anxiety, the problems that we have, the pains that we feel, and what makes us depressed, or what makes us happy, but also what makes us depressed, sad. It's always worry about interactions with people, or thinking about interactions with people in some way, or hopes for, anxiety about, even making a presentation, or being a manager, having to sit down and talk with somebody. We are held in our singular context in so many different ways. And most of these ways are imagination, and remembering is imagination too, because we tend to fill in the gaps. You ever wonder why when you read a book you can fill in so many gaps that the author doesn't describe? Whether it be about the environment, does the author really describe the environment in the exact way that we visualize it or we think of it? Or, is there more interpretation and imagination than there is actual description? And that's true about our experiences as well, being a human being. So much of it in our head is a reality that we imagine, rather than an existence to be, an existence that was, and our present existence. there's all these layers, all these layers of context that make it feel like when something bad happens, it's the end of the world. So all of these layers are what make up our world. All of this context, personal context, is what makes up our internal reality. And that's why when something goes wrong in our lives, we haven't really tamed our emotions, but it feels like our whole world is crumbling. When in actuality, it rarely is as bad as it seems, or even as great as it seems. So much about context. The way that the graveyard brings everything into perspective is that I find that when I go to a graveyard, I wander. I go there to make some basic offerings of change, burn some incense, burn some sage, and say various mantras, Om Kling Kali Ke Namaha, or Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. The first one is very much focusing on Kali, worshiping Kali, connecting to her there. The second one is more, I bow to the Lord who exists in the hearts of all, and it's a mantra basically that confers a relief from suffering. And a lot of the work that I do in graveyards is connecting to not necessarily the souls of the individual or even the ghost, the shade, what have you, but it's aiding that life energy that had become associated with the body, that we borrow life energy, the spirit, from the earth, and that goes back into the earth to be borrowed again in the future. And so much of what I do in graveyards is helping that spirit, that life force that was associated with bodies, that became identified with the body, to aid that process of merging back with the earth, to aid the earth, to aid the whole process, and to aid when that life force is borrowed again. So much of what I do is connected to that. When I'm worshiping Ma Kali, it helps the spirits Kali kind of becomes merged as one thing in graveyards. It's really hard to explain how it feels, but there's segments, there's segmentation, but the segmentation is so not the same as the exterior of a body compared to another body. It's more blurry is how it feels. There's still segments, but they're very much blurry and going back, and I aid the process. That's why it's a great place to connect to Earth, and the Earth is part of the Divine Mother. It's one of the wombs that make up the Divine Mother, just like so much of what is within us and outside of us. There are just layers and layers and layers of wombs everywhere. It's a very gynocentric worldview, in which everything is wombs. Wombs within, different sections of energy, and womb of the mind, of the body, of a land, a forest, a graveyard is a womb, and then, world womb or continent womb, and then, universe womb, multiverse womb. Very gynocentric. But, and that's why when, saying Om Kling Kali Ke Namaha, when you're connecting to the Divine Mother, you're connecting to the earth. The graveyards are a great place to connect to the earth because that's where spirits feel like they're aligned, because everything is spirits, but because we focus on graveyards, because we look at graveyards and think that the spirits are there, they naturally just fall into line there. Even if we didn't have graveyards, then the spirits, it's not so much the body, it is the body in a way, but because we have an idea of the spirits being there, they are there, and they're merging back in. Because a body is placed there, even if it's burned, or even if it's just a gravestone and there's no body and no ashes, the spirit, the life force, the shade as well, ghost is separate, it's more connected to the ego, but the spirit, the life force itself, because we're living people are focused on that being a portal, that's where it goes to merge back in. It's not necessarily just connected with the body or the shade, ghost, ego, that. It's not just connected to that. Though, because the body is placed there, the life force, in this grander subconscious kind of goes there to merge back in as well. It's all about in the grander mind of things, of everyone, of everything. But while doing my work there, doing some very, very basic things, like I said, it's work that, it's long, it's a long explanation, but that's the work that I do there, and I do it with prayers, mantras, prayers. Our Father and Hail Mary. Because mostly they're Christian graves, the spirits, that also helps them. They understand that, and I say those prayers first. And we've gone through this whole song and dance before, where I've discussed this. I say those prayers first before I say the mantras, because the mantras are more specific energy work. The prayers are more getting the what's left of the spirit identified with the body, getting all of them comfortable with the prayers, and then the mantras are actually doing the work. But after doing my work, I tend to wander, and as I wander and I kind of go in bigger and bigger, sometimes I'll circle. So I'll start at a central place and then I'll circle in a spiral. It gets bigger and bigger. Or sometimes I won't do a spiral and I'll just randomly wander. But I always end up, and I never mean to end up here, but I start looking at various graves and start thinking about that time, how old that person was when they died. And you have to know a little bit of history and a little bit of context. And sometimes they'll say where that person died, if they were a soldier or something like that. But if you know some history, some context of, what somebody at that age, let's say that they were 7 years old and they were born in 1900 and they died at 7 years old in 1907. Start thinking of, you start focusing on that person's name, and then you start focusing on what that period of time was like, and what it was like to be a person that was 7 years old, 8 years old, 10 years old at that time and in the place that we are, but specifically at that time and that age. And with the name, you start to construct a general mind picture of who this person was, or how they existed. And you start to, once you create this mind picture, this general layout of who a person was, it even does help when there's a picture there, and sometimes there's a picture there, whether it be in porcelain or whether it be in some kind of photo, or whether it be in, it's literally engraved in the stone. Whatever it is, if there's some kind of picture there as well, that also helps. But once you start creating these mind profiles and you start contemplating them at that time and the kind of life that they probably would have lived, then you start to realize how much that we have compared to how much they had, or how much life that we have had up to this point. If you're watching these, you probably had more life than like a year or 2 or 3 or a few months, or probably even more than 20 years. But you start to really understand how much life that they didn't have, and how much life we have had. That no matter what we don't have, no matter how much we want something and we're not getting it, so no matter how much we feel like things are going wrong in our life, we have so much more materially, but also we just had so much more life than so many of these people, than these children, than these various adults, no matter how old they were. Whether it be somebody who's, was very young or very old. Sometimes, you may be like, wow, this person lived like 94 years, 84 years. Sometimes well into their 90s. And sometimes it'll say, they had this number of, grandchildren or children. And you're like, wow, there's so much more context for that person. They had so much more of life. And we don't know how good those lives were, we don't know how bad they were, but they had so much more, and they had more time to have more context. But when we, look at those graves of children that lived like, maybe they died the same day, or a month, or 3 months, or lived, 4 or 5 years, 7 years, you start to realize that, or for me, it feels very grounding as far as perspective goes for me, but I start to realize that, man, even if they had even if I have all these problems and I want all these things, they didn't even have time to have as many wants. They didn't have time to have the good experiences that I've had. I've had bad experiences, but all the good experiences, they never got that chance. And that person, while the soul might be reborn again and again and again, that individual, that life, as that singular person that soul was for that time, did not even have as much as I've had to this point. I'm 32. There were so many good experiences that I've had that they never got a chance to have, that they never got a chance to experience, that they never got a chance to, maybe go on a date, something like that, or, drive a car, or experience a forest, or have friends, or to think about what it means to be human, and all the things that give us our context, which creates our individual reality. While when it's not going good, it feels like everything's terrible and our whole world is collapsing. We're very dramatic as human beings. It's not just one or two of us. We're so dramatic. The melodrama, there's so much to our reality and our context in our melodrama. But they didn't even have a chance to have that. And I forget every time that I go, I do my spiritual, I say exercise, but you can just say rituals, my spiritual rituals, I help. And then I'm not thinking about looking for infant graves or child graves or anything like that, but I go and wander and I just sense. I send out kind of my sixth sense and just feel around the energy. And it's always very welcoming if you're very kind in graveyards, if you're there to do something helpful, to do something useful, or for a compassionate reason, you'll find that the energy there just welcomes you. And it just, with their waves of that sixth sense, whatever it is, those waves touch your sixth sense and it goes beyond your body, and you feel a welcoming atmosphere, because most people don't do this stuff. But if you do little helpful things in the graveyard, the energy is very welcoming and it wants to connect with you, because during life we're so much in our context as human beings. So whatever's left, there's still sections that are body identified, and that's why it's so not segments, but it's kind of all merging. But there's still so much of the humanness about the energy. But while all of this is happening, when I go to graveyards with the energy work and the spiritual work, I always forget that I'll eventually find a young grave. And when I do, then the humanity is brought back, just right there. When I'm doing all this spiritual stuff, it's not just a human thing. It's a spiritual thing, which is transhuman, but then perspective. And then when that perspective and my context, the understanding is changed, or the perspective is changed, and I get a whole different kind of gift. And it's that I've had so much more than so many. And when you don't go there to do it, and you just happen upon it again and again and again, the context, it's that much more significant. We as human beings, it isn't our intelligence works against us. Our when an animal eats, when it's satisfied with food, there's nothing wrong with it. When it sleeps well, it's safe, it's eaten, it's happy. For human beings, so much of our intelligence, we don't know how to use it, so it works against us. We isolate ourselves further and further into a context where the smallest thing in this small world that we are as an individual going wrong seems like it changes the gravity completely. Because we're using our intelligence and placing ourselves in the contextual box that so much of the spiritual path is breaking out of, is getting rid of that context. And part of it is relating to something human, like I have, where it's like, oh, I've had so many more years. That helps break the box. It helps break the doom of anything going wrong in my life being so detrimental. It breaks that doom. And it connects me to and then the little piece of my box, my context box, is taken off. But so much of the spiritual path is breaking down the boxes, the bubbles. And the graveyard is grounding because, one, human context, two, it's literally grounding. The earth opens up there because we view graveyards as a place where things pass, so there's vortexes. But if you understand the spiritual path as a balance of kind of both, rephrasing your context, one, and two, actually reaching out of those windows that you created in your box and actually working with energy that's not necessarily a human thing or societal thing, but it is a universe thing. Everything's ultimately one. Everything's ultimately Brahman. Everything ultimately is in the womb of the Divine Mother. Kali for me, but Divine Mother in general. Source for me is the Divine Mother as well. God, source, it's all. But when you're feeling down, go to a graveyard. and keep things in context. Take down the walls with the human context. And it's not just one before the other, they kind of work together, and reach out to something that is beyond a single life. Whatever that energy is that you feel like you're connecting to or can connect to, whether you meditate there or do various offerings or do various mantras or prayers, take down the walls of the context and then connect. Graveyards are great for putting things into context and for merging the two parts of ourself, a soul that has been many different life forms and will be many more, and many different objects, and a soul that has been very many humans, and all those humans have felt like their world was ending at some point, or that something that they wanted they realized they're just not going to get, or nobody's going to come save them. Not necessarily like dying of being murdered or something, but just nobody is. Once you realize that nobody's going to come save you, you have to figure out this thing for yourself, at least in understanding. If you're not like physically dying, at least in understanding, you have to figure it out for yourself. And a graveyard is great for realizing that, because we have been so many people with so many different emotions, so many different goals, so many different wishes, so many different dreams. And now we're not. Those people are gone. This person that you are right now is going to be gone. But it's going to be okay. And ultimately, everything is one. Anyway, I hope that helps. I hope that this has helped put various things into context and to give you a general idea about graveyard energy and how it just kind of reaches out to us. I hope this has been helpful. Feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below. Like this video. Feel free to do that, and feel free to share this wherever you like. I'm more than open to that. And I will have been displaying graveyard pictures throughout this video, and that is to more embolden what I'm talking about in your minds, but also to help give you some context. And hopefully, even just this video has helped you do those two things. Think about connect energy, and to rephrase your context in a light where it doesn't feel like everything is darker than it really is, because we either make the light or the darkness in our contextualization of our own lives. Thank you very much, and I hope all of you have a wonderful day.